Hi, I'm Stephanie, and I'm a certified personal trainer.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist.
And this is a podcast dedicated to educating women on their journey to optimal health. There's so much that we can do to optimize our health, but we've talked to so many women who just simply don't know how.
These conversations are what inspired us to start Omnia Fit. The Omnia Fit podcast is all about interviewing certified professionals to educate women on improving our health. We'll talk about things like stress relief through exercise, what we need to know about our hormones, the truth behind fad diets, and more. So subscribe, follow along, and let us know if there are any topics you want to hear more about.
Hey guys, Steph here, and welcome to this week's episode of Omnia Fit. If you're loving these episodes, we would love it if you could give us 5 stars. Maybe even leave a review if you do feel so inclined. We truly appreciate it. And today's episode is sponsored by us. We're offering 20% off a subscription to our website with code PODCAST2022. And I'll make sure to add a link in the show notes just to make it a little bit easier so you can just click and go. We have a couple dozen workout videos led by myself and a few other incredible trainers, and over 60 delicious recipes that are seriously so easy to make and added by our incredible dietitian, Kate. All of this is designed with a goal to make a healthy lifestyle less intimidating and, dare I say, maybe even a little fun to achieve. We also make sure you have full access to both of us if you want a little assistance along the way. Ultimately, we're here to bring accessibility to creating a healthy lifestyle without ever telling you to stop eating or doing what you love, especially if you love cake. If you're not ready to sign up yet, no big deal. You can also just subscribe to our newsletter to be the first to get updates on the exciting stuff we have coming, some of which is just a few weeks away. I'll put the link to subscribe in the show notes as well. But without further ado, let's dive into today's podcast. Today you actually have Kate and I hopping back on, and I am interviewing Kate, our, again, wonderful dietitian, all about hunger. We all know what hunger is. Most of us also know what hangry is. We've all felt we're starving, we need to eat, and we've also been around the rules of just being told we can't eat certain things or can't do whatever. So that's what Kate is going to talk to us about today. Just kind of understanding what hunger is, how to listen to our hunger cues, what they really mean, advice around several different scenarios, and all of that. So I guess first, just diving into it, Kate, you've mentioned that there's a few different types of hunger, not just hunger hangry. So you wanted to start off diving into some of those?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, when we first think of hunger, a lot of times the first thing we're thinking of is just like that true biological hunger. So this is our body's biological response. It's telling us there's no food left in the stomach. We've got a lot of stomach acid going on. We're hungry. We're sending you every cue. You got to eat. Like our blood sugar's dropping. That's sort of our bodies telling us we need food. We need fuel in our body. Simple as that. It's our biological response to needing to eat something.
And I've actually had that a few times lately. I've been texting you like, Kate, you're going to be mad at me. But I went into some workouts being hungrier than I realized and really felt a little cold, a little dizzy, and just truly blood sugar was so low.
Yeah. It's our body, you're going to get a stomach ache. First comes like grumbling. That's kind of our body telling us, okay, the stomach's empty, maybe put something in it. But when you get too much stomach acid, it really will start to hurt your stomach. You'll start to get a stomach ache. You will get lightheaded. Your blood sugar is going to drop. You're going to feel a little dizzy. And we'll go into that a little bit more detail, the different levels of hunger. But really the first type is just our body needs food. And that's as simple as that.
Something that should probably never be ignored.
Yeah, no, don't ever ignore that one. Don't ignore any type of hunger. But for sure, when your body is telling you that it needs food, it knows what it's doing and it knows what it needs.
Yeah. What about the other types of hunger?
So other types, I would say there's 2 other main types. So one is definitely just like a desire hunger. So that's something where like you look at something someone's eating, maybe it's something you've had before, like a really good chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream cone or something, and that's your favorite type of ice cream, and you see someone eating it or you see a picture of it and your body remembers what that tastes like and is kind of telling you like, wouldn't it be nice if we went and got that right now?
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's so much diet culture that says, ignore that, or that's not a real type of hunger. But it's okay sometimes to look at something and think that looks really good and eat it, Yeah. Maybe not every single time that something crosses your mind, like, I wish I had this right now. But especially if you are a little bit lower on that hunger scale, like you are maybe like a tiny bit hungry, and then you see someone eating something and you're like, actually, that kind of sounds like what I want to eat right now. That's totally okay. Our body just remembers how good it tasted, or looked at it, smelled it, and was like, I want to know how that tastes. And that's okay too.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to dive into this now or maybe we can circle back, but I mean, I'm a marketing major and they're pretty much all the food, anything, they just totally target that specifically.
Yeah.
That's why you see the big pictures of food. It's zoomed in. They take beautiful food pictures. Do you have any advice for maybe not counteracting that, but not, I mean, people are literally playing to that chord in our brains, trying to make us desire all the maybe not great things in the world. Do you have any advice around that?
Yeah, I mean, that's why that marketing works, right? Is because they know that our body does that. So they know if we've had a Big Mac before that they can put a picture of it in the commercial and it's going to make us want it because we know what it tastes like. We remember it. And if we like it, we're going to think, wow, maybe I should go get that right now. Mm-hmm. I think that just really ties into listening to our body cues. And if you're not hungry, you don't need to go get that food maybe because you don't want to get to that point where you're overstuffed, you feel uncomfortable, or, you know, let's say maybe it doesn't usually make you feel good when you eat that food. There's no need to run out and go get that food just because you're thinking about it. If you know it's not going to make you feel good or if it's going to make you feel sluggish, that's totally fine. But there, you know, sometimes if you're looking at it and you're like, that's okay. I think the difference is like, are you going to think about it for like 3 days? You know, if you stop yourself from going and eating this thing, let's say like there's so much of that diet culture too around like throwing food away, like not leaving it out because if it stares you in the face, you're going to eat it type of thing. And I think there's something to be said about like if you're just going to stare at a plate of cookies for 3 days and then on the 3rd day you're going to eat all of them because you've just been looking at them instead of eating one every day or every other day and just thinking like, okay, it's okay to have one right now. I think that's valid, you know, rather than restricting yourself to this point of it's all you can think about and then you're going to eat the entire plate of cookies because you've been thinking about it for 3 days.
Yeah, it goes like you just said, the whole binging aspect, and we mentioned it on other podcasts, the binge and restrict cycle where you restrict yourself, say no, 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 the desire just grows, and then like you said, you eat that whole plate of cookies. And this is where too, like I know I used to be really bad at that because I used to be so disciplined of I'm not going to eat these things, this is my list of things that I can eat. I know that's not right. We'll dive into that more later. But then I would go to a party and have a plate of cookies in front of me and have 5 of them. And it takes time, easier said than done. But like now I've gotten to the point where I never restrict myself. So when I crave something, I eat it, but it's so less often now. And when I do go to parties or anything and I see cookies out, I might have 1 or 2. I'm not eating all of them because I'm not telling myself this is the only time I can eat it.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's so hard with some of the talk around diet and restriction is that we do have these types of hunger that are telling us we want it. And then you're telling yourself, I can't have that. I'm never going to eat that again. I'm healthy now. I'm only eating healthy foods. I'm not going to have a cookie just because I want one. And then that's what we end up doing is we restrict and then we binge, 5 cookies. And so I think it's just like, again, part of knowing that our body is going to respond that way. And it's okay to say no to your body too sometimes and say, I don't think I need that right now, but it's also okay to say yes sometimes to what your body is telling you it wants.
Yeah. And then, because I have another thought too, but I think it ties into what you're mentioning the other type of hunger is, because you mentioned you had 2 other ones.
Yeah. The other big one, honestly, is like the stress and emotion driven hunger. So this is kind of like the stereotypical rom-com where they're always on the bed eating a pint of ice cream after a breakup. Like that's every movie you see, she's crying, eating ice cream, always. And there's a little bit of validity to it. Our changes in like our hormones and our stress levels can trigger different types of cravings, different types of hunger in us. Some people, when they're stressed, their body is like so preoccupied with that stress that it kind of isn't telling them to eat, So some people, when they're stressed, don't really eat at all and have to kind of tell themselves to eat. And then other people, when you're really stressed and emotional, your body is sending all these stress hormones out that are telling you, eat something, eat something, eat something. And you kind of end up overeating or eating things you wouldn't usually be driven to. So that's another example of like, as much as we look at it as like our emotions, it's also truly our bodies at the end of the day telling us like, giving us weird signals because of what we're going through emotionally or stress wise.
Yeah. And so that was actually a point I was going to make before, but love that you prefaced this, because a lot of people, going back to the binge and restrict cycle, are so worried that, well, if I let myself have cookies, let myself have ice cream and give into some of those cravings, I'm just going to eat it every single day, end up gaining a bunch of weight, and like then it's just not even a look of aesthetics, but just truly being unhealthy. But I think that's also where, is it just you restricting and then binging? Or is there something emotional and stressful here where maybe it's another area of your life that needs improvement, like stress at work, the amount of sleep that you're getting, because that can also drive cravings of your body's running on needing sugars to sustain itself since you didn't get enough sleep. You should be the one to talk more about that. But, so is there, if it's a consistent thing and you're truly concerned about that, you can reach out to an expert. But, that's where therapy comes in. That's where, is there something else underlying emotionally, mentally going on that can cause some of these things too, right?
Yeah. And like our body remembers things. It remembers how we handled things previously, right? So there's definitely different levels to it, right? Like if you go through a horrible breakup and the first thing you want to do is eat ice cream, it's okay to eat ice cream, But if you are having this emotional response to the food and it's truly a tie of every time I get stressed, the only thing that makes me feel better is like binge eating a certain food, that's 100% not really like a hunger anymore. That's now an emotional biological response that is 100% more suited for something like therapy and talking to someone professionally about more the emotional side, because at that point it's really driven by emotions, not really your stomach, your intestines, your brain anymore. It's kind
even
of
your
just
desire.
Yeah.
And that's even too, even to that extreme, you're saying reach out to a professional, but even if it is just the like trusting yourself and there's not a lot going on, I mean, this whole thing is easier said than done to get to that point. So it is even one of those, don't feel bad or don't feel any type of way if you do need to reach out to a professional to go through a good program to kind of educate, unlearn some of the diet culture things, relearn some of the healthy ways to go about some of these things and really be guided through.
Yeah. So let's say like true disordered eating, right? Eating disorders are treated by a team of experts, right? So disordered eating, binging, restricting to a level that is becoming incredibly unhealthy for your body, that is a psychologist, a doctor, a cardiologist, a dietitian. It's a team effort, and it's okay if you are looking at yourself and being like, there's no way that I could eat one cookie and not eat 15. It's 100% normal to then reach out to a dietitian, a therapist, and unpack sort of a deeper level of why you feel that way. Yeah. Because there is so much emotionally tied to a lot of our food decisions, and that is a whole type of eating pattern that it's not as simple as just dieting, right? It's something that professionals can walk you through in a way that reading an article about how to lose 5 pounds is not going to help you unpack that.
Right. If anything, it might make it a little worse.
It's going to make it worse, yeah.
So then, even backing up to the first type of hunger, just truly, are you like the super starving, your stomach's starting to hurt, all the way to just feeling a little hungry. There's a range there. It's not just, I'm not hungry, to I'm starving, I need to eat. And that's, you probably don't want to wait for that starving mode to eat your food. Do you want to talk about how to know what to look for, how to know when to eat, fullness?
Yeah. So one thing that's been great and a really good tool that was kind of created as part of the intuitive eating movement was the hunger fullness scale. It's going to look pretty similar most places you see it. You can Google it. We'll probably link an example either on the Instagram or in the show notes. But it's a scale of 1 to 10. And 1 is kind of what we were talking about, where if you're ignoring your hunger cues for too long, you're going to get dizzy, nauseous. You might faint, you might throw up. You're truly your stomach is so empty and your body is so depleted that you are feeling absolutely miserable. All the way up to the other end is a 10, which is kind of like the extreme version of that Thanksgiving dinner feeling of you are so full, you're physically ill, you also might throw up, you might feel nauseous, you're so bloated, you're so lethargic. And that's sort of what we see a lot as a result of binging, right? Is you're getting that physically sick feeling of there's too much, my body can't break it down, and it's just my body's mad that I ate that much and it's rejecting it. So when we talk about what you're aiming for, we want people eating between like a 3 and a 4 until they're at the point of like a 7-ish, 7, 8 maybe. Yeah. So you're starting when you get those first hunger cues. Let's say like your stomach's been growling for maybe 20 minutes or so. You still have energy. You're still like ready to make food. That's kind of when you want to eat, because your body's telling you, I'm ready to eat, but I don't need it right this second, but I'm ready to eat. So it's giving you that time to prepare something to eat. It kind of helps you avoid that cycle of grabbing the first thing you can find and eating it because you realize you're like ravenously hungry. It gives you the time to prepare what you really want to eat. And then as you eat slower, hopefully, that's something I definitely am not great at sometimes. If you're eating at like a moderate to slow pace and really truly like listening to your body, within like 20 or 30 minutes or so, it's going to tell you how full it is. So it's going to start to send you cues like, okay, I'm feeling like my stomach's feeling pretty full. You're maybe like looking at the next bite and you're like, I think like maybe 1 or 2 bites and I'm going to feel full, you know. That's kind of where you want to stop, because that's, your stomach is full. It's taking on a really good amount to digest normally, and you're going to feel good. You're going to be energized, etc.
This is also probably part of the podcast where anyone listening probably need to send to a couple men in your life, because I know, Kate, you and I have absolutely talked about we'll be eating with our boyfriends, and we both eat pretty quickly sometimes. Like, we both need to work on slowing down, but they'll eat in a fraction of the time that we do.
It is like supersonic speed where I'm like, your stomach doesn't even know you ate yet and the whole burrito's gone. Like, and that's kind of like part of the hunger fullness scale too. As you practice it, you'll kind of see the difference, you know, because it's true that, you know, it doesn't just immediately hit our stomach. So as you practice, you'll notice if you do get maybe to more of like a 2 on the scale, you're pretty hungry, you're eating something really quickly, and then you finish it and you're like, well, I would usually feel full after that, but I'm not that full. And you eat more, and suddenly 20 minutes later, you're like a 9. Yeah. You're like, oh, well, now I'm too full, you know? Yeah. And it's because it didn't really hit your stomach and start digesting yet until you ate the full capacity.
It's kind of like when you're in the shower and the water's too cold and it's freezing you, so you really turn it up.
You like crank it all the way over.
And then all of a sudden you're burning hot, so you have to like turn it back down, and then you just like slowly millimeter move it until it's perfect. Yeah. Sounds like your stomach's very similar.
Yeah. When I'm like, everyone's different too. I honestly, like, it has taken me so long to learn my hunger cues, because I go 0 to 100 on like my stomach telling me that it's empty. I feel like I have a 20-minute window from I'm a little bit hungry right now to I'm starving. And if I don't eat right now, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I like,
hell's going to break loose.
The longer I've known about the hunger fullness scale, that has helped me a lot, because I know when I feel that little bit of hunger, I should start getting a snack ready. Mm-hmm. And that's something you'll learn, like, if you really tune in on the hunger fullness scale, how does my body work in terms of how it's telling me that it's hungry?
Yeah. And there can also be a little bit of context in there too of like, when was the last time you ate? Did you eat an hour ago? Did you eat 5 hours ago, to help gauge that as well? But also, question for you, my mom listens to these podcasts, so Mom, I love you, but I'm using you as an example because you asked me this question. But she, a lot of mornings after her runs, will make a huge smoothie, and she'll put a little bit of protein powder in it, ton of fruits, a little bit of fiber. And I mean, I've seen the smoothies. They're big smoothies, and she'll eat them. She won't suck them down super fast. She'll usually bring it to her next work meeting or whatever. But she always says, like, Steph, I'm hungry like an hour and a half after I have this ginormous smoothie. Why is that? And so she's listening to her hunger cues, but sometimes she eats something, but then still feels full or still feels hungry like an hour and a half later.
Yeah, so it definitely depends what we eat too. So if we're eating like a higher carb food, maybe with less protein and fat, we've covered this a little bit before, but your body breaks that down a lot faster, because the first thing your body goes to is a carb to break it down as fast as they can, because it's the easiest thing it can use for fuel. So we know that carbs get broken down pretty quickly, especially like refined carbs, stuff like white bread versus a whole wheat bread. there's sort of levels to that, but the first thing your body does is like grabs a carb, breaks it down. And it's like, great, energy right away. This is awesome.
I guess even a blended smoothie, because you've already cut up a lot of that fruit that your body would normally take longer to digest.
Yeah.
Juices are probably the fastest absorbing.
Yeah. So anything like a juice, like we see that actually with people who like have a low blood sugar, you give them juice because it's already broken down, quick carbs, sugar that your body can just grab, instantly turn into fuel and just be like, okay, I'm good. Like I got a little something to get me through. So anytime that you're noticing, maybe like you're like, oh my gosh, I eat, like toast in the morning and then I'm hungry an hour later or something like that. Adding any kind of protein or fat is going to slow the digestion down and really add that value to the meal. So for example, like the smoothie, adding maybe a little more protein powder, adding a spoonful of nut butter for some healthy fat, adding maybe chia seeds for some fat, and just really like bulking it up a little bit can help extend that out because your body then has to work a little bit harder to break down what it just took in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, part of that is like coming off of that example, my mom works from home, so she is able to grab food whenever. What happens though if you're at that 3 or 4 and you can't grab food as easily?
Yeah, so there's reasons to eat besides our hunger cues, right? And that kind of takes practice too and understanding your body, but there's kind of like the idea of a planned hunger where you're planning ahead, knowing that the resources won't be in front of you for a period of time and you don't want to reach that 1 or 2 point. So, for example, if you're listening to your body, you kind of know your hunger cues, you know how long it's been since you ate, and you don't feel maybe particularly hungry right now, but let's say you're going into a 3-hour meeting at work. You might grab a snack and eat when you're at the 5 or 6 point to be like, hey, I'm going to feel a little bit full, but it'll get me through this 3-hour meeting. And that way, when I get out of the meeting, I'll be hungry again maybe and at that good 4 point where I'm ready to eat my meal and digest it well versus, there's nothing worse than like sitting somewhere and you don't have any food with you and you're just starving. You feel like you're starving. You're not really starving, but you're sitting there and you're like, I'm so hungry. And you start to drop down to that 1 point where you're like, I feel sick. Like I need to eat something. So it's valid too that sometimes we have to plan to eat something when we're not at that perfect level of hunger.
And no one needs to be hangry in a 3-hour meeting.
No.
No one wants that.
No, there's like nothing worse. Like even like it happens, I'm in an office, so I'll get pulled into a meeting like right when I'm at like that 3 and I'm like, no, now I need to eat. And like, that's okay. Cause sometimes that's just, it's life, right? Or maybe you're in the long car drive and all of a sudden you're like, oh gosh, I didn't pack anything to eat. And we could either stop now or we could stop in an hour and a half. And so that's where it comes into play of like, sometimes it's better to just eat when you're not super hungry to put something in your stomach and hold you over versus, especially when we talk about like the hungrier you get, the less likely you are to make the healthy choice because a lot of healthy choices take a little bit more planning to eat, right?
Yeah.
Like packing lunch versus going out and grabbing something type of thing. It all ties into convenience versus how hungry you are versus how healthy you want to eat. All of that can be kind of complex.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up the planned hunger because I feel a lot of diet culture talks about reducing snacking or not really snacking a lot, like really planning out exactly when your food times are, but the times where you plan your meals may not perfectly align to when you're actually hungry. So like I like that you brought that up because it's basically a reminder that it is okay to snack and probably necessary to snack to avoid your body going into that binging mode, just needing calories and sugars and things immediately.
Yeah. And it's so interesting too, so much of diet culture, like if you're not listening to what your body considers the best way that it wants to eat, because everyone's body is different. Everyone's metabolism is a little bit different. Everyone's blood sugar levels fluctuate more than others. And that's fine. You can eat to what your body is telling you to do. I'm definitely someone who eats every 3 hours or so, whether it's like a snack, a meal. I just tend to, I feel like metabolize the food at that speed where I need to eat a little something. For example, my boyfriend can eat a big breakfast and then eat dinner and be fine. Like he goes through his day and maybe has a snack in the middle of the day, but like his body works on that breakfast all day and then works on the dinner all night and is like, okay, I'm full. And he maintains a healthy weight that way because that's how his body works. But there's so much of diet culture where there's, stuff like the intermittent fasting and stuff like that, where it's telling you like, ignore those cues and only eat every 18 hours or something like that. That doesn't work for everyone, and that's okay if it doesn't, that's part of why diets fail, is because for me, I wake up starving. If I then tried to force myself to wait another 4 hours to eat something because the diet I'm on told me to wait, I'd probably get to that one and like pass out because I'm ignoring my body's cues to eat something.
And that's almost, it's just like perfectly describing intuitive eating versus diet culture rules. Because I feel like every single diet that is out there has rules, whether it's time-based, types of food-based, amount-based, measuring, whatever it may be. And so it's just moving away from that, which again can be easier said than done, especially if you're so ingrained and have been doing that for so long, and moving more into listening to your body, intuitive eating. But what would you say if someone likes having rules? If they like not thinking about things, how would you structure something without having it be a diet culture diet?
So I think one way to do that, which honestly I kind of practice myself, it links into like the planned hunger in a certain extent, where once you sort of unlearn those not personalized rules and you really pay attention to your own hunger scale and your own hunger cues, and like I said, when do you get hungry during the day? You can definitely plan out when you eat based on when you seem to notice consistently those hunger cues. And you could literally make a timeline for yourself during the day. Like, this is when I need to eat my breakfast. This is when I should have a snack to avoid getting super hungry like a half hour after that. This is when I can have my lunch. Maybe like, do you need another snack in the afternoon? Are you okay then until dinner, depending on what you eat for lunch? But if you're someone who needs that structure, you can lay out like based on what I've noticed from my hunger cues and based on what I'm eating. And obviously this can fluctuate if you're not eating typical foods maybe.
Or if you work out in the morning when you usually do afternoon,
yeah,
that can change it.
All of that can like spike your hunger cues differently. And again, like you just pay attention to those hunger cues and they'll tell you. But if you're a standard like 5 days a week, I wake up, I work out, I eat something, and then I'm hungry 3 hours later, you can start to plan for that. You can think, okay, so I need to eat my breakfast and then I need to have a plan for 11 a.m. when that next round of hunger hits. Like, do I want to have a snack? Do I want to eat my lunch earlier? And that's okay because you're personalizing it to what you need.
Yeah.
And those can all be like, let's say someone's listening to this and they're like, well, I'm maybe trying to lose weight. And so that is hard because then I feel like I'm adding food. But you can be making all healthy choices all day. The same breakdown of food that you were going to eat anyway, but you can spread it out a little more if you need to, Like, let's say you pack a salad and a cheese stick and an apple and maybe some little crackers or something for lunch. It's okay to eat the apple at 10 and then the cheese stick at 11:30 and then eat your salad and then eat a little bit of the crackers later in the day. It's okay to spread it out if you're noticing like, oh, I'm a little hungry right now, but not ready for lunch, so I'll eat a little bit of what I packed. And then, it's okay to have a plan.
Yeah, it's a structure based on your own body cues, like you said. And I think also the biggest differentiator is it's not rules to avoid certain times. So like you said, it's not okay, I'm usually hungry for lunch at 11:30, so that's what I'm going to eat. But that doesn't mean you're not letting yourself eat at 10:30 instead.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the point, is you're not eating to these rules that don't make sense for you and don't make sense for your body. You're structuring something that works for you. And whether you're trying to gain weight, lose weight, whatever your goals are, you're trying to get more veggies in during the day. The wonderful thing about structuring your day around your body is that you can structure that however you want and work on those goals in tandem with listening to your hunger cues.
Yeah. So my next question is revolving back to diet culture, because you go, like we mentioned before, you look anywhere and there is some sign or picture or quote from diet culture. Like I've seen charts where on the left it mentions if you're craving chocolate or salties or sweet or whatever, it's your body actually needing these acids or vitamins or whatever, so eat this instead. Or like if you're hungry, you're actually just thirsty, so drink some water instead. And just a bunch of other stuff like that. So in general, what are your thoughts on a lot of these infographics, and how do you know if they're good to listen to or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it ties back to so much of diet culture is just telling us to avoid food. It's telling us to avoid eating calories and food as much as possible. And it's telling us, like, that's how you'll get healthy, is if you just eat less. And it's as simple as that. And so they've gotten trickier, you know? They're kind of more like, actually, it might be a mineral deficiency. So don't eat chocolate when you want it. It actually means this, because they're almost getting smarter. They're like, well, people aren't buying that anymore. So we need to tell them it's a deficiency of something, or they're actually thirsty, or
we need to get more science-y so they'll believe it.
Yeah.
It's more like a doctor telling you something.
And like, here's the thing is, if you have this raging craving for salty foods that you can't get rid of, it could be tied to something like a mineral deficiency. And that's something you can talk to your doctor about and be like, hey, is there a chance I could get panels done just to make sure that this isn't tied to this? Nothing wrong with that. Like, if you see that infographic and you're like, hey, maybe I do have a deficiency in something because I have this craving all the time for this specific salt or sweet or something, and it's concerning to you, that's fine. Go get a panel done, see if it's valid, but don't like never eat chocolate because you see an infographic that says, if you want chocolate, actually have almonds. Like, it doesn't really work that way. It's not that simple.
Especially if you eat that chocolate and then you're fine.
Yeah. And that's part of it too, is like we said, there's so much toxicity around that idea of just don't eat it if you want it, and eat something else, or just don't eat it at all, because our brains remember that we wanted it 2 days ago. Yeah. And they're still thinking about it probably.
And that reminds me too of the podcast we did around eating healthy around the holidays. And that reminds me of something you said about how you've known coworkers to literally skip the holiday parties and not go to them because they're so nervous about seeing all of the sweets and cake and deliciousness that they just want to avoid because they know they can't stay away from it. It reminds me a lot of that too.
Yeah. And that's so sad to think about, thinking about missing out on something because you're like, well, if I see that, I'll eat all of it. And that's what's really awesome about mastering something like hunger cues and mastering listening to your body, because you know, you'll go into that party and you start to feel like you're at like a 7 or 8 level of fullness, and you'll be like, this is a good time to stop. You know, like, I tasted everything, I'm having a good time, but I probably shouldn't go back for another whole plate because I'm a little too full for that. And it's kind of like a built-in way of us eating healthy portion sizes, because our body knows how much it wants to eat.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, even in general too, it's also a reminder that food doesn't always have to be seen as fuel. I know that's a common phrase too in diet culture. It can be a social thing. It has been for thousands of years. Food has been present at holidays, anniversaries, parties. I mean, dating back to, I don't know if this is true. I'm going to make this up, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was pictures of people eating food on the Egyptian pyramids. Like,
I mean, food is so much more than food. It's cultural. It can be religious. It's a way people express love in families, you know, like,
ooh, it is my love
everyone
language.
has that grandma who makes like that amazing dish every time you come over because she knows you like it, or always has the snack around that she knows you like she's expressing love by having that for you. Or like, who on their anniversary, like everyone's anniversary, you're like, let's go out to a really fancy dinner and eat really good food together, because we create a lot of memories around food. And so it's not just fuel. If that was the case, we'd all just be eating literally plants and meat and
boiled chicken and veggies.
We'd still just be going outside and picking flowers up and eating them or something, because we would have never developed all of these foods around like culture and, you know,
enjoyment,
rituals and family time and going out to eat at fancy restaurants that use amazing ingredients from all over the world. And none of that would have developed if it was just as simple as, I just need to put something in my body as fuel.
Mm-hmm. So don't fight against thousands of years of culture and human development, and eat the food.
Yeah. Yeah. And intuitive eating is a huge new movement in the last few years. You can take full courses on it. Me and Steph are actually currently in the works of creating some of our own courses, and 100% this and intuitive eating is going to be a big portion of the nutrition part. There is so much education out there to dive further into this, but in terms of just like the hunger scale, I think is such a great place to start, because no matter whether you even have health goals or not, even if you want to go tell your husband about this and be like, hey, like, did you know that there's like a hunger scale and you shouldn't be eating until you're incredibly full every single time? Or maybe bribing him like we talk about with our boyfriends here. Like maybe if you didn't eat so fast, you could listen to your hunger cues. I think it's just an amazingly useful tool no matter where you're at.
And that's a really good final takeaway, I think, too.
Yeah.
So, kind of kidding, not kidding. My hunger is at around like a 4 or 5 right now. So I'm thinking that we need to stop this and go get a snack.
Yeah, we're about to have a snack.
Yeah. Perfect lunch there.